My name is Mirko Kovac, and my team at the Laboratory of Sustainability Robotics at Empa is developing a robot inspired by nature. These are bio-inspired drones that have lifelike capabilities. Our work is transforming the way how robots can live alongside humans, become embedded in the fabric of our natural environment, and help us achieve the United Nations sustainability goals.
Why do we need lifelike robots? What are they good for? How do you build one of these wondrous things? And how do you become a drone or a robot designer in the very first place? These are the questions I'll be tackling today with my first guest, Mirko Kovac, who's a professor of robotics at Imperial College London and head of our Sustainability Robotics Lab here at Empa. Pleasure to have you as our first guest, Mirko.
My pleasure.
My name is Michael Hackman. I'm head of communications here at Empa, and I'll be the host of this new series. Now, you might wonder what Bright Minds is all about. It's a new series of videos and live streams in which we will showcase some of our brilliant researchers and their clever ideas for designing a sustainable future. Back to today's guest, Mirko. In the video trailer we just saw, you talked about your robots being inspired by nature. How do you mean that?
Well, today robots are often starting in a simulation environment and in a laboratory environment, and often the reality gap of going into the real world is missing, or the robots don't function as they should in the natural environments. So by looking at nature, we can really learn the principles of how animals operate, how, for example, birds operate outside, and they have mimicked the capabilities that they have, which can be extremely valuable for industry and our society at large.
And that is what you mean by lifelike capabilities, sort of interacting, sensing the environment.
Yeah, for example, birds are able to fly around, fly through gaps in the forest autonomously. They can collect food, they can reproduce, they can attach themselves to trees, walk on the ground, dive in water. All these things are currently not available in robotics, but they would have a step change in terms of the applicability or value they would create for society.
So you could do entirely new things.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you need to create a lifelike robot, just in general?
Well, in general, I think we need a philosophy of building them in a multidisciplinary approach. As I mentioned, simulation can be good, but often what is missing is an integration of materials, of the morphology, of the controllers, of the neural networks, even of biological tissue. And by co-evolving biology, chemistry, neural networks, the body morphology, and the controllers, and the materials all together at the same time, we can create those lifelike robots. We call this method of doing that physical artificial intelligence. As
opposed to plain artificial intelligence.
Exactly. So the physical AI is a method of building those lifelike robots.
I see. What would they be good for? To come back to my very first question at the beginning of the show, what would we need them for?
Well, you mentioned sustainability, right? And a big challenge in sustainability is that in environmental sciences, often people have to climb trees, place sensors manually to then collect, data of biodiversity or study climate change. Now, this is costly, dangerous, and often not possible simply because of manpower. So having drones that will be able to do that autonomously and place those sensors would be extremely valuable. And so we have built robots that can do that by perching to the trees, like sloths or like tree-hugging animals, I would say. And like this, be able to do it much more fast and cheaply and collect better data.
And less dangerously for all the workers and humans being involved in the other. Now, we talked a lot about your drones. The proof of the pudding, as they say, is in the eating. Let's look at one. Let's look at the fire drone. Good name, as we can see. While we look at it, why don't you explain what's so special about this thing?
So this was really motivated for me personally in 2017, when we had the Grenfell fire, which is the tower in London that was burning and killed more than 72 people. And so it's a real catastrophe. So the people used to ask me that time, I was running the Aerial Robotics Lab at Imperial, whether we have drones that can go inside and look for survivors. So we didn't have that. So since then, we've built a partnership between Imperial College and Empa to do exactly that, co-evolve the materials and the drone technology to create systems that are lifelike, which in this example means they have an embedded aerogel material that makes them fireproof, fire resistant, and like this able to operate inside
very, very high temperatures.
Exactly,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
longer
yeah,
time and
yeah.
look for survivors, map the environments and so on.
And as we could see, you field tested them already.
Yeah, so we developed them. We interviewed firefighters to actually look at the use case and build the system as a validation. And now we're spinning that off and developing it further.
Okay, to really go into real, I mean, that was obviously a staged fire, as we could see, but to really go into real fires. Okay, I see. Robot designer or drone designer is kind of it's not your everyday job. Was that always your dream job?
But for me, it is the everyday job. But as a child, let's say, I was very excited about technology. I took apart watches and firecrackers and make my own electrochemical devices and so on. Now I'm basically doing the same thing still. However, I have a great expert team here at Empa and Imperial working on that. So I'm doing the same thing. I think maybe what was for me the driving force is to wanting to create systems, right? So to in some way build them and show that they can do useful things. And so that's what was my driving force. And I think for every person it's different. But if you have this impulse of wanting to create useful, beautiful kind of living systems, I think robotics is a good field.
Okay, I see. Goals, talk about the bigger scheme of things. What is it you would ideally like to achieve by seeing your drones in action?
So the 20, 30-year vision, I would say, is to create...
Long breath.
Still have a bit of time.
Yeah, exactly.
So for that, what I would like to do is an ecosystem of flying robots that would be minimally invasive and be able to sense and modify the environment. A bit like an immune system of our natural world, of our infrastructures, of our buildings, where the robots would do sensing tasks and identify the dangers or damages, then do automatic repairs and act on the information. Like an artificial robotic immune system of our world. And I think this would really give value and do something good for a more sustainable world.
I see. Your zoo, as I might want to call it, your zoo of drones is sort of growing as we speak virtually. You have shape-shifting drones. You have drones that can land on water and lift off of water surfaces. You have, as you said, drones that can sort of fire off sensor darts in all sorts of environments, ecosystems like forests and so forth. How do you come up with all these, crazy ideas?
So I think what is important is to look at nature and then see all the amazing things that the natural world does and is. So just the awe and the kind of adoration of nature, I think for me is a personal
source of inspiration.
Exactly. And also respect. And so trying to mimic part of that, but not just blindly, but by using the same principles that make them work. I wrote a paper in 2013 called the Bio-Inspired Robot Design Paradigm, which explains the way how to do that by mimicking the principles and not the morphology behind. But of course, I think also helps is to just have a calm mind so that the ideas come from or emerge from the subconscious. So I think,
and as you said earlier, a good team in the background. Yeah, exactly. Let's maybe look into the future, take a glimpse into the future. At Nest, where we are right now, you are envisioning a drone hub, basically a home for some of your drones, or a miniature ecosystem for your drones. Let's maybe take a glimpse into the crystal ball, and why don't you explain what we see?
So this is a vision to create a drone hub, which is a netted environment that has 3 innovation elements. Number 1 is a facade, where we can develop and test and validate repair drones that would engage and repair cracks and damages. The second is an ecosystem, a biosphere, where we can then have robots that biodegrade or sense the environment. And the third is the integration with the facade. So overall, it's again this vision of the immune system, that the robots live in the building and are part of the building, doing sensing and repair tasks. However, what is new here is that our headquarters, our group will be there too. So we'll use ourselves as an experiment in some way to see how it is to live with the drone.
Alongside the drones,
basically.
Basically,
Co-work with the drones.
Okay, I see. Robots, drones, AI, we talked about artificial intelligence, but AI in general. There's a lot of fuss about these things recently in the news, in the community, of course. Not all of the things I've been reading and hearing are entirely optimistic if they sort of, look into the future. What's your take as a sort of researcher in the field on say, on ChatGPT, on all these AI-based algorithms, tools, and so forth, and of course, our future engaging and living with lifelike robots?
I think it is dangerous. There is certainly a danger that the field has as a potential. So the genetic engineering community, for example, in the 90s, there was a big debate about should we clone animals and so on. And eventually the world agreed overall that we shouldn't clone humans, for example. So there's a few rules that were set up internationally as a ethics framework. And I think something like this is needed for robotics too.
Okay.
And we are not there yet. So I think we need a better effort and a more aligned effort to do that.
And the consensus amongst all the practitioners in the field as to what to do and what maybe not to do.
Exactly. And so if you're able to do this collectively, then we can create those sustainability robots that can make our world more safe, more robust, reduce the cost of operation, and make our world even more beautiful.
Well, I'm looking forward to that one. So thank you very much, Mirko. That was my questions for today. We intended to keep this short, but of course, there's always Q&A from our audience out there. So I'm curious to see what comes up in our chat function. So there is one question. I'm just reading that to you. Soft robotics is a growing research field. There are other players. What makes your innovations stand out? Why are you better than the others, to put it bluntly?
Well, soft robotics is a field that studies the interaction of materials, manufacturing methods, and structures to solve some of the computational challenges that robotics has. For example, if you think of a gripper, it can be very controlled and look at the object to grip something, or it can be soft and adaptive through the mechanics of the gripper. This is also called morphological computation. So it's a very large field, and I think together really we can be the best actually by working together and creating those types of systems at a lower cost, making them more accessible to everyone in the world.
Okay.
What Empa has as a unique capability, I think, is the material science, because robotics often lacks expertise in materials, and that's also the reason why I, 5-6 years ago, actually made the contacts with Empa to create a center that can combine materials and robotics.
Okay. So this unique combination between two disciplines, actually. Another one. Have you ever thought of bringing your knowledge about soft robotics into a startup, sort of founding a company and sort of commercializing the technology?
Right. Yeah, so I'm very excited about that, actually. So what I would like is to set up a pipeline to create many startups, many ideas that come from concept to implementation, to data collection, to then industrial adoption. And the Drone Hub can be a funnel for that. One example that we are working on at the moment is the fire drone, actually, you mentioned. And I think this has huge potential to be applied. And we have so much interest from industry now this week. We had a lot of engagement with the media, with industrial end users who want to use it, want to engage with it. So I think having that as an example, I think would be excellent.
Yeah. Well, maybe for those of you guys who haven't followed the media, it was a huge media frenzy this last week, 10 days or something like that, where your paper came out about the fire drone, and it was picked up by lots of newspapers, lots of BBC and stuff all over the place. Maybe a third one. The robots you design help solve sustainability problems. What about the drones themselves? How eco-friendly are they in and by themselves? Are they produced in an eco-friendly way? Interesting question.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. Thank you for asking that. So, in fact, yesterday we had a PhD thesis defense on that topic, and so one of the research pillars that we work on in the lab is biodegradable materials for robotics. So making the robots biodegradable. So they would fly around, sense the environmental parameters.
So to do their job?
Yeah, right, exactly, to study climate change. But then in vulnerable environments, you don't want to pollute the environment. So they would then fall apart and biodegrade, leaving zero environmental footprint or near zero. And so this idea of transient robots is a topic that we are working on very hard, actually. So to make the robots themselves sustainable, biodegradable, compostable, and then also apply them to address the United Nations sustainability goals to really make a difference in the world.
So even the electronics, the sensors, you know, maybe the motors and stuff, all these components would be based on bio-based materials in a way.
Yeah, so
that's the goal.
Exactly. So we work on actuation, sensing, structures, you know, computation, and all this can be done with biodegradable materials.
Okay. So that was it. I see no, there is one more. No name, but with new technologies, people are always concerned about robots taking over our lives. Well, we touched upon that already. How much support from robots do we actually need? Well, that is maybe a philosophical question.
Yeah, I think taking over our jobs that are dangerous, dirty, or boring, I think is extremely important. So if you look at today's world, you know, mining is done with people in huge dangerous environments. Firefighters are in enormous dangers. Wind turbines are inspected by people climbing up on them. Construction is done with humans that often work at height. It's extremely dangerous. These are just some examples where flying robots can make an enormous difference and really make it more safe, more sustainable, cheaper too. And so I think that's the positive use cases that we need to show and demonstrate how robotics can be a force for the good.
Okay. We're approaching, I look at the time here, we're approaching the end of the episode. Thank you very much, you guys on the screens, for tuning in. And thank you very much, Mirko, for being my first guest, my guinea pig, so to say. It was a pleasure, as always, talking to you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
My next guest will be Evgenia Gilstein, one of our researchers who's working on printed electronics. And these printed electronics have really amazing capabilities. They're flexible, they're transparent, they're mechanically resistant, they're environmentally friendly. But hear and see for yourselves.
My name is Evgenia Gilstein, and I'm contributing to the development of printed electronics with my innovative processing technique for thin film materials, specifically to circuits that needs to be as flexible and conformable as possible. How can my technique impact the field of printed electronics, and how could this translate to sustainable solutions in applications that cannot be fulfilled by conventional rigid electronics? In this video, I will give you insights into the many applications of my innovation.
So I hope that triggered your appetite for the next episode. I sincerely hope you will tune in again and see you around next time in late August. We will post the exact date of the episode on our website, on our social media channels, and you'll see that at the lower end of the screen. Thank you so much, and see you around next time.